It was just past 2:01 a.m. when the dispatch crackled through Deputy Tucker Bell's radio. A domestic disturbance reported at Red Rock Trailer Court, a neglected sprawl of rusted mobile homes on the edge of Amarillo, Texas. Population there barely cracked 200, mostly folks living under the radar, running from something, or simply forgotten. Tucker had been working the graveyard shift alone that week. Sheriff O'Connor was out sick, and most of the team was covering a fatal pileup out on I-40. He rubbed his eyes, drained the last bit of bitter gas station coffee, and steered his cruiser down the 2-lane road toward the park. The summer night air was heavy, 85 degrees, even after midnight, and something felt off. Not in the way of danger, not yet, but in that crawling kind of silence that wraps around a place like a warning. His headlights cut through the dust and darkness, illuminating warped fences, dead grass, and collapsed porches. The trailer park was built like a maze, rows of mobile homes packed too tight, most with shattered windows or tarps nailed to the roofs. He rolled past Lot 3, then Lot 6. No signs of movement, no lights. When he reached Lot 7, his headlights caught a single flickering bulb above the door, barely holding on. He stepped out, one hand resting on the grip of his sidearm. The air smelled like old grease and urine, with something underneath, coppery and raw. He called out, "Amarillo Sheriff's Department, anyone here?" No response. The door was open, just barely. He approached, flashlight drawn now, sweeping the narrow entrance. Inside, the floor creaked beneath his boots. The air was thick and hot. His light landed on the couch, overturned. The coffee table was shattered, shards of glass from beer bottles across the floor. Something had happened here. Something violent. He moved further in. The kitchen had been ransacked. Blood smeared along the fridge, not splattered, smeared, like someone had been dragged. His breath caught as he turned toward the bedroom door. It was shut, but the bottom was dark, no light leaking out. He nudged it open with his boot. What remained of the body was barely human. It was a man, or had been, maybe late 40s. His torso was torn open, ribs snapped and jutting like jagged teeth. His arms were missing. Half of his face had been peeled away, exposing muscle and bone. And above all of it, carved into the back wall, deep into the drywall with some sharp object, was a word. Hungry. Tucker backed away, gagging. He keyed the radio on his shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Bell at Red Rock Trailer Court, Lot 7. We've got a 10 to 54. Send backup and..." The radio cut to static. He adjusted it, stepped outside, but the air had changed. Something moved between the trailers. A shadow, large, fast. He reached for his gun. Nothing. His sidearm was gone. He turned to the patrol car, still locked, keys in his pocket. Then he heard it. Heavy steps in gravel. Slow. Deliberate. He swung the flashlight around and caught the silhouette. Tall, easily over 7 feet, shoulders unnaturally broad, covered in what looked like matted fur. Its face was obscured, but its eyes, orange, reflective, intelligent, stared straight into him. Tucker froze. Every instinct screamed to run, but his legs didn't listen. The creature moved closer, stepping into full view. This was no bear, no coyote, no man in a costume. It was something wrong. With one bound, it was on him. He raised his arm just in time to block the first strike. Claws tore into his forearm, shredding flesh down to bone. He screamed, staggered, and slammed the flashlight into its face. The thing recoiled, not in pain, but surprised. It backed away, then sprinted off into the maze of trailers, not running scared, but as if taunting him, as if the hunt had just begun. Bleeding and dizzy, Tucker stumbled back to the cruiser, slammed the door shut, locked it, and tried to breathe. The radio flickered to life just long enough to catch one word from dispatch. Repeat? He couldn't speak. Outside, the bulb over Lot 7 went out. The cruiser's interior reeked of blood. Tucker's left arm was shredded. 4 deep gashes ran from wrist to elbow, the muscle beneath pulsing and exposed. His uniform was soaked, his skin pale from blood loss, but adrenaline kept him from passing out. He pressed a crumpled roll of gauze from the glove box against the wound, teeth clenched to stifle a scream. He couldn't stay there. Whatever had attacked him, no, hunted him, was still out there. Somewhere between those rotting trailers. And it didn't finish the job. He started the engine. The headlights sputtered, flickered, then stabilized. As the lights swept the narrow lane of crushed gravel and dirt, he caught something, just for a second. The front door of Lot 14 stood wide open. No lights, no noise, just a black rectangle of emptiness. He stared, breath slowing. Lot 14 had been vacant for months. He remembered the eviction. The family that lived there, the Allens, had disappeared after a series of complaints from neighbors. Strange howling gutted pets, windows shattered without any sign of forced entry. When the sheriff investigated, the place was empty. No bodies, no explanation. He should have kept driving. Instead, he stepped out of the cruiser, gun in one hand, flashlight in the other, and walked toward Lot 14. His boots crunched the gravel louder than they should have. The night around him was dead silent. No insects, no wind, no breathing. The front steps of the trailer groaned under his weight. He paused at the door. "Sheriff's Department," he rasped. His voice sounded foreign. He stepped inside. The stink hit first, like rotting meat left in the sun. Then the flies, swarms of them. The beam of his flashlight cut through the dark and landed on the source. 3 bodies. A man, a woman, a child. Their faces frozen in silent screams, mouths open, eyes gone. The father's throat had been ripped out, the mother's chest torn open, ribs snapped and peeled back like broken wings. The child, maybe 5 years old, was curled beneath the kitchen table, arms shielding his head, half of his body missing from the waist down. Tucker staggered back, bile rising. The walls were covered in scratch marks, deep ones, clawed. But worse, above the bodies, written in something thick and dark, smeared across the wallpaper, were the words, "Not done." Suddenly, from the back of the trailer, movement, a creak, then another, then silence. He raised his weapon, heart hammering against his ribs. His arm burned. Blood soaked through the makeshift bandage. "Show yourself," he barked, voice shaking. Silence. Then, a figure. Small, thin. A girl, maybe 10 or 11, barefoot, wearing a blood-stained dress. Her eyes were wide, blank, her skin pale and sickly. She stepped into view from the hallway, stopping just outside the circle of his flashlight. Tucker lowered his gun an inch. "Are you hurt?" She didn't answer. He took a cautious step forward. "Hey, I'm a cop. My name's Tucker. I can help you, all right?" She looked past him toward the doorway behind him and whispered one word. "He's here." Before he could turn, something hit the trailer. The walls shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling. Something heavy was moving outside, circling the structure. The girl dropped to the floor and crawled under the couch, curling into the darkness. Tucker backed into the corner, weapon aimed at the door. Something slammed against the side of the trailer. Then again, he fired through the wall. Silence. The entire trailer shifted slightly. Something had climbed on the roof. He could hear it now. The scrape of claws on metal, the slow, steady movement. It was crawling above him. Then, the ceiling buckled. A long, black-furred arm punched through the sheet metal and grabbed Tucker by the shoulder, claws piercing straight through flesh. He screamed and fired upward, once, twice, the rounds tearing chunks from the beast's limb. It let go. He stumbled out the front door, blood gushing from the new wound, and collapsed in the dirt. He aimed his weapon again, but saw only movement as the shadow vanished behind another trailer. When backup arrived 10 minutes later, 2 patrol cars and an ambulance, they found Tucker unconscious by the steps of Lot 14, barely alive. The 3 bodies were still inside, but the girl was gone. And on the roof of the trailer, gouged into the aluminum in claw marks too large to be human, was a single word: tonight. When Deputy Tucker Bell opened his eyes again, the world above him was sterile and blinding. The sound of heart monitors and muffled voices filled the background. He was in Baptist St. Anthony's Hospital, smack in the center of Amarillo. A nurse leaned over him. "You're lucky, Deputy. Lost a lot of blood. Couple more minutes and you'd be done." He tried to speak, but his throat was dry as gravel. She gave him water, then left. His right arm was strapped down, not restrained, stabilized. The forearm was wrapped in layers of gauze, but he could feel the stitches underneath. His shoulder had been dislocated. The upper bicep bore puncture wounds the size of bullets. The flesh around it was feverishly hot. A man in a dark suit stood in the corner. Lean build, buzz cut, sharp eyes. He stepped forward. "Deputy Bell, I'm Special Agent Reed Langley, FBI. You're lucky to be alive." Tucker grunted. What the hell was that thing? Langley didn't answer at first. He pulled a chair beside the bed and sat. "You're not the first person in Amarillo to see something like this," he said. "Not even this year." Tucker frowned. There were more? Langley pulled a folder from his briefcase, opening it to reveal crime scene photos. Mangled bodies, destruction, claw marks, blood trails vanishing into the night. The first was 6 months ago. Couple camping in Palo Duro Canyon, torn apart. Then a drifter found near Route 287, similar injuries. Then it went quiet. Tucker stared at the images. "And you never told local law enforcement?" Langley gave a thin smile. "Sheriff O'Connor's on our list of trusted contacts. But this town's got a memory problem. No one wants to remember the things buried under the sand out here." He leaned closer. "You saw it, didn't you?" Tucker hesitated. "It was big," he said. 7, maybe 8 feet. Fast, intelligent. I looked it in the eye. That wasn't just an animal." Langley nodded. "And now it's hunting again." Outside the hospital, the Amarillo Police Department had already cordoned off Red Rock Trailer Court. Forensics were still recovering remains from Lot 14. The scene was now classified. Inside the investigation center, Detective Nina Harlow paced in front of a map of the town. Dozens of red pins marked disappearances, unsolved deaths, and animal attacks over the past 20 years. Most were ignored, filed under wild dogs or drug violence. But the pattern was there. A migration. A loop. The epicenter was always somewhere near Red Rock. Her phone buzzed. It was the coroner. "You're gonna want to see this for yourself," he said. The morgue was cold, 40 degrees, and smelled like bleach and death. Nina stepped inside as the coroner, Dr. Alvin Grant, pulled back the sheet covering the smallest of the bodies. The child from Lot 14. "Notice anything?" he asked. She looked down, jaw tight. The stomach was ripped open, ribs snapped, but there were no teeth marks. The wounds were precise, controlled, not random violence, surgical cruelty. "That's not what a dog does," she whispered. He nodded. "Same with the adults. Muscle tissue torn, not chewed. Limbs removed at the joints. He pulled up another tray. This time, a severed hand. Found this 2 trailers down. It's human, he said, but not from any of the victims. She stepped closer. It was a man's hand, thick, calloused, torn from the arm mid-forearm. But what caught her attention were the claws, long, curved, and the skin, dark, bristled with thick, unnatural hair. "What the hell?" she murmured. Grant frowned. "It's not costume latex, not synthetic. This is biological." She leaned in. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying whoever this belonged to wasn't fully human." That night, the hospital power flickered twice. Then, silence. Nurses on the 4th floor heard scratching in the air vents. They dismissed it. Rats, maybe. But at 3:14 a.m., security camera footage caught something walking past the south stairwell. A figure, humanoid, but too tall, too distorted. The footage glitched. The next frame showed nothing. Tucker was asleep when the fire alarm blared. He bolted upright, head pounding, shoulder burning. Nurses ran down the hall, smoke billowing from a janitor's closet. But there was no fire. The smoke was from blood. 2 bodies were found in the storage room. A nurse and a maintenance worker, torn open like packages, their lungs exposed, eyes removed. Tucker tried to leave his bed, but collapsed. His legs weren't listening. He crawled toward the hallway, leaving a smear of blood behind him. That's when he heard it. A low, guttural breathing. Close. Something was inside the hospital. Something walking upright. It passed by the hallway, just out of sight, but he saw the shadow stretching under the door. Broad shoulders, clawed hands dragging across the wall. It stopped, sniffed, then moved on. Tucker slumped to the floor, shaking. It had come for him, and it would come again. 3 days after the hospital incident, Deputy Tucker Bell was discharged against medical advice. The staff wanted to keep him for observation, especially after the unexplained power outages and the security footage that had somehow been corrupted. But Tucker couldn't stay. He felt it. Something was changing inside him. The wounds had begun healing too quickly. The deep gashes on his forearm, which should have required weeks of recovery, had sealed into rough pink scars in under 72 hours. His body temperature fluctuated. His appetite surged. But the worst of it? The dreams. Every night since the attack, he awoke soaked in sweat, the sheets twisted, his heart racing. He saw a forest, dark and endless, even though there were no forests anywhere near Amarillo. He smelled blood, heard howling, and every time he woke with dirt under his fingernails and dried mud on the soles of his feet. He hadn't left his room. Not willingly. Nina Harlow stood outside his trailer the morning after his return. She didn't bother knocking. "You look like hell," she said, stepping inside. Tucker sat at the edge of his couch, shirtless, a bandage around his ribs. He didn't respond. "We ran tests on that hand," she continued, dropping a manila envelope on his coffee table. "The tissue structure is wrong. Human bones, animal cartilage, blood cells with mutations I've never seen. Lab said it's contaminated. I think they're scared." "I'm changing," Tucker said finally. Nina looked at him. "We don't know that." He turned his arm toward her. The scar tissue had turned black around the edges, veins darkening beneath the skin like spreading ink. "I wake up at night covered in dirt," he said. "I'm hearing things. I can smell people outside my trailer. And I knew you were coming 5 minutes before you knocked." She didn't know what to say. "Have you told Langley?" he asked. "No. He's not answering my calls." Across town, Special Agent Langley was alone in a motel on the outskirts. poring over classified files. The case wasn't new. In 1963, similar deaths had occurred in Lubbock. Then again in 1989, near Waco. Every time the same signs: shredded bodies, missing organs, strange footprints that faded mid-stride. What connected all the attacks was one constant. They always started in trailer parks, always among the isolated, the transient, the ones no one would miss. And there was another detail, buried in footnotes and ignored reports, survivors who didn't die, but changed. Langley opened an old file labeled Blaine Krieger, a deputy sheriff from Tulsa, Oklahoma, attacked in 2001. Survived a mauling. Disappeared 3 weeks later. Body never recovered. In red ink, scrawled across the final page, "Transformation incomplete. Host rejected." Langley muttered under his breath. It's not a creature. It's a virus. Back in Red Rock Trailer Court, the residents were beginning to leave. Rumors spread fast in small towns, and by now everyone had heard about the murders. Some believed it was gang violence, others said a rabid animal. But the ones who'd lived there long enough, they didn't speak. They packed quietly and vanished. Only one person stayed. Lorraine Tisdale, 76 years old, born in Amarillo, and the unofficial historian of Red Rock. Nina visited her that afternoon. "They said you were here during the 1963 killings," Nina said. Lorraine didn't smile. "I was 16, she replied. "My brother lived in Lot 14, same trailer, same sounds, same smell." "What happened?" "Nothing official. Folks found the bodies and set fire to the place. No investigation. Sheriff at the time said it was wild dogs. Told everyone to keep their mouths shut." "And the creature?" Lorraine stared out the window. "You think it's one thing," she said, voice thin. "A monster. A beast. But it's more than that. It wants people to see it, to be afraid. Fear's part of the infection." "Infection?" "I watched my brother rot from the inside. His eyes turned gold. He started changing. Losing time. Woke up naked in a field once. Couldn't explain it. He shot himself a week later." Nina's heart pounded. Lorraine looked at her, and for the first time, her voice trembled. "It doesn't want to kill. It wants to pass itself on." That night, Tucker stood shirtless in front of his bathroom mirror. His pupils were slitted, his teeth sharper. Not fully. Not yet. He didn't know how much longer he had. He opened the medicine cabinet and stared at the revolver inside. Then he closed it. Outside, someone knocked at his trailer door. Slow, deliberate. He grabbed his sidearm, approached the door, and opened it an inch. No one. Then something hit the side of the trailer with bone-cracking force, sending him tumbling backward. The wall caved inward, not broken, pushed. The creature had returned, but this time it didn't flee. It stood in the doorway, ducking under the frame. 8 feet tall, covered in coarse black fur, muscle layered over its frame like armor. Long arms, clawed hands, a snout wet with saliva. But its eyes, yellow, reptilian, stared at Tucker with recognition. It didn't come to kill. It came for him. Tucker raised his weapon and fired. The gunshot echoed across the trailer park like thunder. Tucker's bullet tore into the creature's shoulder. The impact barely staggered it. A spray of dark, almost black blood splashed across the floor. It roared, low and deep, not in pain, but in rage. He fired again. The second round hit its jaw, twisting its head sideways, but it didn't go down. It lunged. Tucker dove, smashing through the coffee table, landing hard against the far wall. His shoulder screamed in pain. He scrambled to his feet, slipped in blood, and ran into the bathroom, slamming the door behind him. The creature crashed into the wall, shaking the entire trailer. The door splintered. It was coming through. Tucker raised the pistol again, but it clicked empty. He threw it aside, heart racing. The mirror reflected his face, sweat-drenched, pale, and something else now, veins black and bulging across his temples. He didn't recognize himself anymore. The door exploded inward. Just as the beast lunged, a spotlight hit the trailer from outside. "Sheriff's Department! Drop the weapon!" 3 cruisers had arrived, sirens off, lights flooding the lot. Deputies moved in, rifles drawn. The creature froze. Then, without sound or warning, it turned and leapt through the roof, vanishing into the night. Tucker collapsed against the wall, bleeding, heart hammering in his ears. Deputy Gerard Reyes, one of the new recruits, pulled him to his feet. "Jesus, Bell. What the hell was that?" Tucker couldn't answer. He just looked toward the hole in the ceiling, still shaking. 20 minutes later, just as the officers were securing the scene, a panicked call came through the radio. "All units, active 1071 at Red Rock Trailer Court, Lot 14, multiple assailants, backup needed." Lot 14. Again. Reyes, Nina, and Langley arrived seconds apart. The night had turned from quiet tension into something unhinged. Lot 14 was lit up, windows shattered, screams echoing from inside. Blood sprayed across the siding like a canvas. They rushed the door, weapons ready. Inside were 5 more bodies, neighbors, families, slaughtered. One woman had her chest ripped open, heart missing. A man's legs had been torn from his torso. The remains of a teenage boy hung from the ceiling fan, intestines unraveling like rope. It wasn't a random rampage. It was a message. Langley crouched beside a body near the back door. "This isn't the same one from earlier," he said. Nina turned. "You're sure?" Langley nodded. "Footprints are smaller, still huge, maybe 7 feet. But different gait, lighter." "There's more than one," she whispered. Outside, screams erupted from the far end of the park. Reyes ran toward the sound with 2 other deputies. A trailer was already engulfed in flames. Through the smoke, they saw another creature, this one leaner, with reddish-brown fur and a hunched posture. It moved like a wolf on hind legs, but with hands that could tear steel. It didn't run from them, it charged. Deputy Martinez opened fire, rounds tearing into its chest, but the thing kept moving. It slammed into Martinez, claws digging into his ribcage. One swift motion, and his spine snapped, body crumpling like wet paper. Reyes screamed, firing point blank into its eye. The creature shrieked, reeled, and fled into the night, leaving a blood trail behind. Only 2 deputies remained standing. Sirens wailed from the highway now. News of the slaughter had reached City PD. More units were en route, but the damage had been done. By dawn, 11 people were confirmed dead, 4 missing. Dozens fled the park for good. Tucker sat in the back of an ambulance, wrapped in a blanket, eyes vacant. Nina knelt beside him. "What did you see tonight?" He didn't answer for a long time. Then finally, "I saw its eyes before it ran." "And?" "It wasn't just killing. It was choosing." Back at the morgue, Dr. Grant performed the autopsy on Deputy Martinez. The wounds weren't just from claws. There were bite marks around the neck and shoulders, deep ones, jagged and infected looking. Grant extracted tissue samples, prepping them for lab analysis. He paused, then turned to the assistant. "Seal the body. We're quarantining this one." "Why?" Grant removed his gloves, eyes heavy. "Because whatever did this, it didn't just kill him. It left something behind." That same night, 2 miles outside Amarillo, in a shallow ravine where the light never reached, a figure stood in the dark. The wounded creature, the one Reyes shot, crouched low, chest heaving, blood dripping from its face. and in the shadows behind it, two more shapes emerged. Larger, older, watching, waiting. Rain fell hard on Amarillo the next morning, a gray, relentless downpour that soaked the dirt streets and washed the blood into the gutters. But it couldn't erase what had happened. 11 dead in one night. 2 deputies hospitalized, and more missing. The city was quiet, almost stunned, like it had stopped breathing. Nina Harlow hadn't slept. She'd spent the last 8 hours digging through the sheriff's archives in the old records building on Taylor Street. Dust-covered boxes, paper files that hadn't been opened in decades. She found what she was looking for under a mislabeled case from 1963. Animal attacks. Summer incidents. Dozens of pages. Photos, too. The bodies back then looked just like the ones from Lot 14, ripped open, disemboweled, missing parts. But one file stood out. The disappearance of Dale Murrow, a sheriff's deputy who survived an attack, was quarantined and vanished 12 days later. The notes were scribbled in pencil. Medical observations, changes in behavior. The final entry was just one word: eyes. She flipped the page and found a black and white photo of Murrow, taken 2 days before he disappeared. His pupils were slitted, like Tucker's. Nina drove straight to Tucker's trailer, heart pounding. He was sitting outside in the rain, a blanket over his shoulders, eyes locked on the distance like he was watching something only he could see. "You knew?" she said. He didn't move. "You felt it for days now." He nodded once. "My dreams. They're not dreams. They're memories. But they're not mine." She knelt beside him. "You're turning." "I know." He looked down at his hands. The veins were black now, the nails thicker. His muscles ached all the time. His hearing was sharper. He could smell the ozone in the rain, the metal in her blood. "I'm losing myself," he whispered. "No," she said. "We can stop this. We have to. There's still a way." He turned his head slowly. "They want me, not dead. Changed." Back at the morgue, Dr. Grant was reviewing the latest blood work from Deputy Martinez's corpse. What he saw didn't make sense. The blood sample had mutated. White blood cells were replicating at inhuman speeds. Something was rewriting the DNA, actively. Even in death. The infection was alive. He ran to the cooler. Martinez's body was gone. The metal tray was empty, and the lock on the door was snapped from the inside. The camera feed outside the autopsy room showed nothing. Just flickers, glitches, then silence. By nightfall, Special Agent Langley had reconnected with Nina and Tucker. He brought them to a bunker just outside town, an old fallout shelter converted into a holding site for classified cases. Inside were photos, records, samples from cases all across the country. "This thing," Langley said, gesturing to the evidence boards, "has appeared in different states every few decades. The names change, the bodies stack up, but the behavior stays the same." He clicked a remote. Images flashed on a screen. Old news clippings, autopsy reports, blurry photos of something large moving through forests, deserts, even suburbs. It doesn't kill for food. It kills to infect. It marks territory, spreads the curse. It's a cycle. Tucker stepped forward. "How do you stop it?" Langley hesitated. In every case, the only way the attacks ended was when the infected were destroyed, burned, buried, cut off before they could spread. "And if they weren't?" Nina asked. Langley met her eyes. "Then it grows. It adapts. It becomes harder to track, more intelligent." He pointed to the map on the wall. "The epicenter has always been Amarillo." Later that night, Lorraine Tisdale was found dead in her trailer, torn apart. But something was different this time. There were no claw marks on the walls, no words carved in blood. Instead, on the floor next to her, was a single human fingerprint, blackened, charred, and a trail of bloody footprints, human footprints, leading out the back. In a field just outside the trailer park, Tucker stood barefoot in the mud, naked, shaking, his skin slick with sweat, his mouth full of blood. In his hand, a human heart, his or someone else's. He didn't remember. From the trees behind him, he heard them, the others, coming closer, accepting him, calling him. He dropped the heart and stepped into the dark. The night sky over Amarillo was cloudless, and the full moon hung like an eye, watching, unblinking. A state of emergency had been declared by 9 p.m. All remaining residents of Red Rock Trailer Court were ordered to evacuate. Roadblocks were set at every exit from town. Langley had called in federal reinforcements, but communication lines were unstable. Radios shorted out, cell towers failed, and power flickered unpredictably. It was like the town itself was being choked off. Nina Harlow stood at the center of what had become a war zone. She was armed with a shotgun, Kevlar vest tight across her chest, and a steel pipe strapped to her thigh, one tipped with silver, stolen from a church relic. She didn't know if it would help. But at this point, nothing felt human anymore. At 11:17 p.m., the attacks resumed. It started in the East Quadrant. 3 trailers burst into flames almost simultaneously. Screams followed. Something, or several somethings, moved through the rows like phantoms. Security cameras showed glimpses, fur-covered limbs, glowing eyes, shapes too fast to track. One deputy fired a flare into the air. It revealed 4 creatures surrounding the court. Then it died out. The backup never came. Tucker Bell stood near the playground at the edge of the park, the same place he used to smoke during night patrols. Now he was shirtless, barefoot, and unarmed. His skin steamed under the moonlight. The changes were complete. He wasn't like them. Not fully. He hadn't turned. But he wasn't human either. He could feel the others, feel her. Nina, still fighting, still alive. He closed his eyes and stepped into the mud. Then he ran. Faster than any man should move, body propelled by something primal. He tore through the brush, leapt over fences, and landed in the middle of the chaos just as a creature lunged toward a screaming family. He collided with it mid-air. The 2 bodies slammed into the side of a trailer, denting the metal like paper. They fought, claws slashing, jaws snapping. The other creature was stronger, older, but Tucker fought like something with nothing left to lose. He drove his thumb into its eye, tore at its throat, slammed its skull into the concrete. It bit into his neck, tore a chunk free. He didn't stop. With one final scream, he grabbed the silver-tipped pipe from the ground and jammed it into the creature's chest. It shrieked, loud enough to shatter glass, then convulsed and collapsed. Smoke poured from its mouth. Tucker fell next to it, blood pumping from his throat. He looked up. Nina stood over him, tears in her eyes. "I didn't want this," he rasped. "I know." "You have to finish it. You have to burn them." Then his eyes shifted, golden, slitted. He smiled and died. By morning, the trailer park was silent. 15 dead. 6 more missing. 3 of the creatures had been burned. 1 fled into the hills and was never seen again. The military never arrived. The files were sealed, and Amarillo once again buried the truth beneath silence and fear. 3 weeks later, Nina Harlow left the force. She moved to New Mexico under a different name, but she never stopped dreaming of eyes in the dark, of footsteps outside her window, of something breathing beneath the floorboards. One night, she opened her mailbox. Inside was a manila envelope, no return address. She opened it slowly. Inside A single photo, grainy, black and white. A gas station security still. It showed a tall, shirtless man with golden eyes walking down a desert highway. Behind him, 2 others, and written on the back, in jagged handwriting, "Not done." Like this video if you felt the dread creeping in with every heartbeat. Comment below. What would you have done if the creature came knocking at your door? Share it with someone who needs to know the truth. That some things that howl in the dark aren't just stories. And most importantly, if you think you're strong enough to face what's coming, subscribe to Imstar Midnight Horror and turn on the notification bell. Because next time, it might not knock. It might already be inside.